Well, thanks, Josh, for joining us today. Just wanted to recap. Whereabouts are you joining from again? You're on the West Coast, right?
I am, yeah. First of all, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this. We've been trying to get it on the calendar. We finally did it.
We finally did it. It's amazing. We're here now.
Yeah, we made it happen. I'm coming at you from the West Coast. I'm in the San Francisco Bay Area, little island called Alameda, which is just across the bay from San Francisco.
A little island. Very cool. Okay.
Yeah,
Very
island
cool.
life.
Island life. We're talking like beaches and palm trees, or what are we talking?
There's a beach and there are palm trees, but it's almost certainly not what you expect. So it's an island in the San Francisco Bay. So, the water is a lot calmer. It's a little different. Yeah. But it's a beautiful place. I've been here for 11 years now. And it's been great to me.
Very cool. Very cool. I've only been to San Francisco once, and I did go to Alcatraz. So I'm not sure how close you are to Alcatraz.
So I'm like, okay, so Alcatraz is sort of, I'm the other way. So Alcatraz is like north of the city a bit in the Bay.
Yeah.
I'm like east of the city, but it's a much better place to live, Alameda, than Alcatraz.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. To say that you lived in Alcatraz might have a different response.
Yeah, it's like a little different. The podcast would go in a really different direction. And
exactly.
Judging from your accent, you're clearly from the deep south of the U.S., right?
Absolutely. Yeah, you chose very well. Currently living down under on the Gold Coast of Australia. So,
beautiful.
Sort of the north part of Australia on the East Coast. Great spot. Lots of palm trees. That's why I ask. So,
well, I'd like to go. I've never been to Australia, but I hope to get there someday.
Yeah, it's you'll love it. I think a lot of sort of Americans, especially from the West Coast, it really resonates with them. It's sort of like the beach, the weather, that kind of vibe. It's very cool. So tell us, Josh. I'd love to understand. I've been following you for a little while now, and just love to understand a little bit what you do at Apollo.
Yeah, me too. No, just kidding. It's a little bit of everything. So my title at Apollo, I'm our VP of Content Marketing and Product Education. What that means is I have 5 or 6 squads. I'll kind of run you through them. So I've got our social, community, and influencer marketing team. So that rolls into me. I have a video team that rolls into me. I have a content marketing team. I have our knowledge-based team, and I have our product education team. So functionally, what does that mean?
Yeah.
So we run and manage all of our social channels. We also own our knowledge base. We own the Apollo Academy. We do thought leadership, category creation, that kind of stuff, as well as our magazine, which is what we call our blog, the Apollo Magazine. And then we kind of fill that function as like an in-house creative agency for the rest of the organization of the marketing team. So we produce all of our ads, we produce all of our copy, we produce all of that. And we work across the business. So we make content, inside the application, Apollo itself, on our YouTube, which my team runs as well. And everywhere people can be. I think that's like one of my philosophies of content marketing is like, be where your audience is. And with sales and our audience at Apollo being go-to-market professionals more broadly, they're everywhere. So we try and, be where they are and try and be everywhere as well.
I mean, yeah, we've been using Apollo ourselves for probably 2 years now. And I think what I've really noticed is, obviously the tool is amazing. We love it. But particularly from the marketing perspective of Apollo and the way that you've launched, like the Academy, the magazine, the YouTube, like the Outbound Sales book, which I want to touch on in a second. But yeah, it really feels like the business has doubled down on marketing, particularly content marketing. And that's obviously been a lot to do with what your role is there. So yeah, really exciting to see just how companies can do content well, and no doubt it's getting results for you guys. Otherwise you wouldn't be doing it. So
yeah, it is. I think, we definitely take a more holistic view of content at Apollo than most companies. I think part of that has to do with our business model of being primarily a product-led growth model where, you don't have to talk to a person. I think most of our customers never talk to a person at Apollo. Maybe they interact with us via support queue. But the genesis of that, when I started, I had one employee. I have like 20 plus now today. And I've got to give credit where it's due to Tim, our CEO. Tim has always believed that we need to teach the world how to do go to market well. And in order to do that, he was willing to kind of put his money where his mouth was. Once I came in the door, I think candidly, they didn't really have the right profile of person before. They didn't know, they didn't have somebody who knew both subject matter expertise in the space and then also had the chops as a producer, creator to actually make the content. But once I landed, we started small. I just revamped our case study program and our webinar program. I say small, it took our webinars from an average of like maybe 2,000 registrants and 500 attendees to 10,000 registrants and several thousand attendees, and revamped the case studies from like very kind of boring generic to the one employee I had when I started. I shipped her a copy of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas by Hunter S. Thompson. And I was like, look, you don't have to read this whole book. Just read the first chapter. And that's going to give you a sense for where we're going to take our content. So she came back to me. She's like, so you mean like first person? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, you mean like kind of like a story? And I was like, yeah, exactly. And so we just kind of started with those two assets and produced way more case studies than the company had ever had in a much shorter time. And the webinars just started getting like people reaching out to our people at our company and posting on LinkedIn about a webinar they went to, which just like doesn't happen. And that kind of led to a virtuous cycle. And I think where things really came together for us was when the knowledge base moved under me as well. And this is like a really, most software companies have some kind of technical documentation or knowledge base, right? But it almost never rolls into content marketing. Like it's viewed as like a different thing. And
customer service.
Yeah, customer service, success, something like that. But it really is, it's content, right? And like our knowledge base drives over 1 million organic hits a quarter. And if that's not content marketing, I don't know what is. It has a different goal, right? It's not like our goal isn't SEO. Our goal is just making people successful. But I think often, when you put it somewhere like success or support, not marketing, you're not getting the best writers in the world working on a support team. But you might get some really, really quality writers in a marketing org. So anyways, I could talk about this all day. I know you didn't ask me all those questions, but we have invested in content is the short answer. And, in terms of is it paying off? It is. And I would say in a lot of different ways, right? Like across the life cycle, because we do have the knowledge base, we have the academy. Those are properties for our customers. Like I'm not driving net new business there. I'm driving engagement and activation and retention and expansion, upsell, and like those kind of things. And then, with the rest of my team and on the social side, that's a huge part of our growth engine as well is creating word of mouth. So the businesses continue to go up and to the right, and knock on wood, my organization has gotten to grow along with that.
Yeah, it's very cool to see, and it's obvious, like especially the knowledge base. I've really noticed that it's not just your standard sort of content on there. It's actually like there's a bit of design that's gone into it. There's a bit of thought. It's actually engaging versus just straight text and things like that. And also the academy has been extremely well done. So obviously we're HubSpot partners, so we've been looking at how HubSpot do their academy knowledge base as well. And definitely you guys have taken some cues from that, no doubt. And I dare say your academy is even like more professional in many ways, the way that you've actually, shot the video content. It's just, it's exceptional. So well
Thank
done
you.
on that.
That means a lot to me. Yeah. HubSpot are the goats, right? Like they got in there and did incredible stuff with HubSpot Academy. Of a certain age, you'll find a marketer of a certain generation. We're all HubSpot certified at something, right? Like they really nailed that.
Basically, world domination, haven't they? Really, from a content
they really did, and that was a whole journey. Like I built the academy, not the coding. Though we have an in-house team, who built it, but I built all of the content. The first version of the academy was all me. Every video, every line of copy, everything. To see it grow from there to, I can share some of the stats. And it's been a year now. We've done 2 versions of the academy. We've had over 550,000 plays of our content on the academy in a year, which has been like, wow. I didn't expect that. But part of it was that commitment, what you said, like how we shot it. There's different flavors of content on there, but one of the flavors of content that I really believe in is like, we got to make content that doesn't talk about our product at all. It just teaches people how to do the job well. And if I'm going to demand you watch something for 40 minutes, I got to make sure it's up there with something that you'd find on Netflix or YouTube or Hulu, where, that they can command that amount of time span. I managed to hire an incredible video team who can pull that kind of stuff off in house, and yeah, it's paid off. It's been really cool.
Even your launch event earlier this year, I think it had like Apple event vibes to it, like it was. Yeah, that's the one. Was that one where you were hiking up a mountain in some weird, like German Lederhausen? Yeah, that was the one. Exactly. Yeah, it was very professional, like, the Apple event vibes. And I was like, wow, Apollo are really, really taking their content seriously. And that's why I wanted to get you on the podcast, because it just shows, obviously, everyone has different budgets and different journeys in their business, but just to see how you guys are doing it so well. And I think just taking, again, HubSpot, but taking it to the next level in terms of just that, like, as you said, that Netflix quality, you can definitely see that come across. So just circling back, like, obviously we've used Apollo for a couple of years now. We love it. Just for maybe listeners who aren't as familiar with Apollo, could you just give like a really quick recap on what the hell Apollo is?
Yeah, we probably should have started there.
Yeah, true.
Sure. Happy to do it.
My bad, sorry.
So Apollo, website's apollo.io. A lot of people refer to it as its full name, apollo.io. What Apollo is, I'd say the best way to describe it, it's like an end-to-end sales platform. It really has everything you need to run a modern sales engine, both inbound and outbound sales. So what goes into that? On the one hand, you've got what's probably the world's largest database of contact information for B2B professionals. Well over 200 million contacts there from well over 50 million companies. So that's kind of the foundation. He's got this incredible pool of data. And then you got all the tools that you need to kind of take action from that data. So we've got we call an engagement suite. These are things like sequences where you can send emails, make calls, connect with people on LinkedIn, do all of that from within Apollo. And then everything down funnel, you can, send a meeting link to set up a meeting, record your sales call, listen back to the call. We have like a lightweight kind of CRM situation where you can manage your pipeline, your opportunities, your deals, like all in one place. So, and then what differentiates Apollo, I would say, from everyone else in the space is most of the time to go buy a tool that does this, you've got to go talk to a salesperson. And with Apollo, you can just get started for free instantly. You're up and running in the seconds. And that really, I think, is like the secret magic sauce behind Apollo that every other player in the space, for the most part, just hasn't gotten to.
I remember sort of life before Apollo. And I remember early days, I had a call with, I think it was the CMO at Lusha at the time, based in Israel. And I'm like, what's this Lusha tool? And that's when it was basically ZoomInfo were pretty much had the market share. I think it was basically the monopoly, really. And then Lusha came through. And then I think probably, maybe 12 months later or so, I think you guys started to really, and then like looking at G2 and other sources, we can really see you guys are like leaders now, even above ZoomInfo as well, which was really the established presence, wasn't it? Like in the space for so many years.
They really were. Yeah, I think that's, I could have done a better job pitching Apollo. We're the most loved sales tool on the planet. That's a line that we use a lot. 4.8 stars on ZoomInfo or on G2 from like 7,000 reviews. And yeah, ZoomInfo, they really did kind of establish a market dominance, like almost a monopoly position. They supplanted Dun & Bradstreet, right? It's like Dun & Bradstreet was like the old school player. ZoomInfo came in, they bought Discover.org, combined those two things together, really became the dominant player, went public. And then they just set about abusing that monopoly power, right? Where they were just kind of holding people to these insane contract terms, sicking their legal team on companies who wanted to churn, like just doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So that made the market ripe for a player like Apollo to enter the space where you want Apollo, you can pay month to month. You don't even have to pay at all. You can create an account for free. There's just like a radically different approach to the space from the data position, the data part of it. But I think pretty early on, our founders realized that like data is just going to be, I don't want to say a commodity, but it's going to become something similar to that, right? There's just going to be a lot of players, which is why we focused a lot on these other parts of the product. Yeah, one of them being also that I forgot to mention is enrichment, like enriching your CRM. I think that's an issue that when I was a rep, I always experienced is like, okay, I've got these accounts in my CRM. Let me go email this guy. Email bounces. because people change jobs, they turn over, and that's a problem that you can solve with the data as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it does seem to be like more commonplace now, that kind of enrichment place. Like obviously even HubSpot acquired Clearbit, which was part of that enrichment. But yeah, you're right. It's not just about the data anymore, although that's obviously really important. You don't want to have bounced email addresses and even worse, like phone numbers that just don't call anyone.
No.
No one wants that. But yeah, I think just the other features of the tool, and I definitely feel like even with Apollo, just the UX UI design has really improved as well. Even again, I'm talking the last 12 months, like that recently, it's really changed. It's a lot more kind of. It was always user friendly before, but like even just the way that the sequences and the reporting and the settings and all that kind of stuff in the tool is, it looks great. So definitely done a great job.
You're gonna make a lot of people on our team so happy. I'm gonna go tell them this, that you said that. Yeah, we've invested a lot. We say a product led company. You mean it. We invest way more in our product and our R&D team than we do in any other part of the business, and that shows up. So thanks. You said a lot of nice things about Apollo and about my teams. I'm super happy to hear it. I know you wanted to get into some stuff. You mentioned the book. You mentioned AI. Yeah, where do you want to go?
Please, let's dive in. So, tell me about this book. Like, so when you started working at Apollo, I'm guessing you didn't think you were going to write a book, did you?
So that's what's funny. Actually, in my interview, I pitched a book. That was like one of my before I even started at Apollo. I was like, "Hey, listen, it'd be really cool. Like, let's write a book on how to do this."
Yeah.
So yeah, it actually came. We came at it from both angles. Like both Tim and I came at this from slightly different directions. So the book, Tim's thing. Tim is our CEO. For those of you who are listening, so Tim's thing was, we need a way. Go to market is so hard. Like sales is so hard. Not only just like doing the day to day, but knowing like what is best practice. Like especially if you're new to sales. You're a founder, you're a first-time salesperson, or you're maybe a first-time sales manager. Everybody's kind of winging it. So we find ourselves in a really unique position at Apollo because we have both the data and like the people data, but also the engagement data from people sending emails and making calls. We can go mine that data and find just like objective fact, like what works, which was always really interesting. That's one of the reasons I wanted to take this job. It was really interesting to me. I'd spent 10 plus years in outbound sales, and I had a pretty good idea of what worked based on being really successful in the field myself. But now I'd have a chance to kind of test my hypotheses against this massive pool of data. So for Tim, he came to me one day and he was like, I pitched that among many other things that we have ended up doing in my job interview. And they're like, yeah, cool. But, start out with case studies or, whatever, which we did. And we kind of like built our content engine one brick at a time. But Tim came to me sometime last year. No, it was last summer. It was right before I had my daughter. So my daughter was born in July. He came to me. Congrats. He was like, hey, if you could just write a guide for our customers, but also for our team internally on like how to do go to market, how to like really do it well, everything they need to know, not just how to use Apollo, but like everything they need to know to do it. Like, could you pull that together? Could you do that in the next few weeks? And I was like, can I do it? Yeah, definitely I can do it. In the next few weeks? Like, nah, we don't know. Who knows? And then my wife delivered our baby and I left. Yeah. Went on paternity leave for a while and came back pretty quickly thereafter. We got started working on it. So I had done, we had a bit of an advantage because I had created a lot of content for Apollo already and a lot of webinars, for example, of, how to do these various things, what's the right inbound sales process, what's the right email copywriting, how to prospect, how to create automations, like all these different parts of the puzzle were there. We just needed to go tie that together in a narrative. And I mentioned earlier that I inherited this writer when I joined Apollo, and I gave her this, copy of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Her name's Carly Stone. She's amazing. She's still at Apollo. And by this time, Carly and I had a really good working relationship, but she kind of knew what to expect from me as an editor, what I would expect from her as a writer. So I kind of just went to Carly and said, hey, we're going to write this book. And we're gonna pull all the stuff together that we've made over the last year. And then we're going to go talk to our data science team. We're going to get a bunch of data and we're going to go. And what I told her and what I told everybody at the company, I'm like, we're going to go write the #1 best-selling sales book of all time. and
Yeah.
it's going to take a while to get there, but we're going to go write it, and then we're going to go market it, and then we'll get it to where it needs to be. Carly and I spent, probably 10 or 20, no, more than 10, probably 20 to 30 hours together in calls like this, where she would kind of record and I just kind of talk through how I would lay out the chapters. And by this time I was managing a team of, I don't know, between 20 and 50, because I've had different teams come under me and move out from, under me at Apollo in my tenure. So I didn't have time to put every word on paper. I had to kind of like lay it out. And then Carly had to go kind of actually do the typing and the writing and like the hard work of the bringing the book together. And over the course of about 5 months, we did it. And by that time I had been able to bring in a director of content marketing under me, kind of serve as editor-in-chief, and kind of pulled my whole team together to proofread and edit. And once the book was ready, we put it out on Apollo Academy for free, just like ungated and just available on the site, just as kind of like a blog. And that we launched this summer, and we had like 25,000 people read it, which was like an insane, I don't know, like, just way more than I thought. And then once that had kind of run its course and was now just like out there, I went back to the team and I said, okay, now it's time to actually put this thing out on Amazon and and it's a real book. So we publish it ourselves. Amazon has great tools for publishers. And we launched the book on October 1st. We were, for a time, the number one best-selling book in sales category, small business category, telemarketing category, just like a bunch of the categories we wanted to rank for. I think we're somewhere, we've been between 3 and 6, week over week, but we're really just getting started with the marketing there. And the book we've been really blessed. It's had really great reviews from the folks who've read it. I've yet to see somebody say it was anything other than useful, that was my whole goal. And when I got to Apollo, I created a mandate for my teams, like a mantra for us. And I said, anything that we make, a salesperson has to engage with it, whether they read it or they write it, or they read it or watch it. And by the end of it, they have to know how to make more money. That's the bar. And we don't put anything out that doesn't hit that bar. And that was kind of the genesis of that book. And yeah, so that's the saga of Outbound Sales. Let's start of the book.
Started off with the job interview and ended up. So you reached your KPI from the job interview. So well done.
I delivered. I brought it. Yeah. I said I was going to do it, and we did it.
Yeah. And what I love about it, I've got it up on my other screen here, is just to see like the way that you've designed it on the Academy is just like this beautiful kind of, again, it's more than just like a blog. It's just the design around the book is, again, I haven't seen anything like it. So yeah, it looks stunning. Really easy to read, and yeah, can't wait to see it on Amazon as well, in book form. So
it's there. Yeah, I've got a copy of it in the other room. It's out. You can buy it. It's on Amazon. It's free on Kindle. And yeah, our design team, I think that's one of the best parts of working at Apollo. We have the best people. The guy who designed that page, Aaron Stump and Raya Belarbo, the two designers I work with who've designed the Academy, they just brought their A game all throughout, and that when they're bringing that level, I feel like I have to bring my best as well. And it just creates a virtuous cycle.
That's right. And that's kind of the perfect combination, isn't it? Like not just the design, but obviously the content is really good. And as you said, it's very tactical. It's not just sort of, because sometimes, there's a lot of content out there that you read it and it's just cookie cutter, broad, generic. Whereas definitely find with your content, it's very, number one, it's personable because you can tell it's written by you or the team based on experience, but it's very tactical. And I think that's something that I think as a marketer myself, I really appreciate that, because you can read it and then walk away and you actually have something to action versus just generic content, which is, ChatGPT and everything else can pump that out in 3 seconds. So, whereas this kind of content, AI can't deliver, so this is totally different. And I think this is where, coming to our next kind of conversation, this is where I think content is going and needs to go. Otherwise, it's just nothing's going to stand out anymore, right? It's all going to be the same generic sort of stuff. So yeah, well done on that. It's it reads great.
Thank you.
I wanted to just dig in briefly, looking at like how you see the sort of the state of outbound SDR life. Particularly thinking ahead to next year. Like, I know that we can't sort of not talk about AI as well, and I know that Apollo has made some big product updates recently when it comes to AI in the actual product. But how do you kind of see outbound SDR AI sort of over the next sort of 12 months? Love to get your take on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk about it. So, I touched on this a little bit at the end of the book, and we're going to write an addendum to the book that should come out early next year called Selling with AI. But the way I talk about it in the book is like, AI is a really powerful tool, but I really think about it, we're in the middle of a Silicon Valley hype cycle about AI. People out here talking about AGI, artificial superintelligence and all this stuff. That's just, they're out there doing their pitchman stuff. That's not real talk. It's a tool, it's a powerful tool, kind of like a calculator. If you don't know what the buttons mean, calculator is not any use to you, right? But if you know what the buttons mean and you understand the concepts behind it, it's a really powerful tool. And I think AI kind of plays the same role. If you understand sales and outbound sales and what you need to do, it's a really powerful addition to your tool belt. But if you don't, and you just kind of you want to try and start with that, I'm going to have AI do all this for me, you're going to have a bad time. So, to answer your question about the future of the role and outbound sales in general, what we're seeing in the data and is what Google and Microsoft and Yahoo have been saying. They're doing what they're saying they're going to do, which is, hey, we're going to make it harder for you to send a high volume of poorly written emails. And they've done that. And that's real. For anybody listening to this, like, if you're getting worse results now than you were 2 or 3 or 5 years ago from your outbound emails, it's because Google has caught on to the game. And it's actually pretty easy for them to distinguish between somebody who's engaging in the normal course of business in their workday and somebody who's doing, high volume outbound sales. Normal person is going to send 10 to 30 emails a day, like at the most. Outbound salesperson, and a lot of those emails are going to be internal. Some of them, they're going to be part of a long chain of back and forth with like vendors and partners. Like, that traffic has a distinct pattern. Outbound traffic has a really distinct pattern too. It's one person sending an email to somebody they've never interacted with before that's really similar to the 500 other emails they sent that day. And when you do that, Google just shuts you down now. So what that has meant for outbound sales as a whole is that relatively cold calling has gotten a lot more important because, and like the broader statement, and we cover this at length in our book and every other asset that we produce at Apollo, is that multi-touch is the only way to be effective at outbound for most people today. And I'll make like one caveat. The one caveat here is if you have really strong product market fit, it doesn't really matter. Like if you haven't, in the example I give, if I email you and say, I have a winning lottery ticket, do you want to buy it from me for $2? That's really strong product market fit. I'm going to get a lot of replies, right? So if you got something like that where your audience just needs it, wants it, it's super urgent, relevant for them, whatever, send your emails, it's going to work for you. But the vast majority of companies don't meet that criteria. So for everyone else, you really have to, and the stats are really alarming. It's like if you send a one-off email that's not part of a sequence, you have only a 16% chance of booking a meeting. Like 16% of the people who do that book. If you send email-only sequences, it's less than half. It's like 46% of people book a meeting. And these stats are from earlier in the year. I wouldn't be surprised if this is much lower today than it was then. But if you weave in cold calls, LinkedIn touches, manually written emails that aren't templated, with a couple automated follow-ups and that kind of thing, now you skyrocket to over 70% chance of booking a meeting. So when we think about, the future of the role, I think we're moving back to a world where a full cycle sales rep is the norm, where you're doing you've got one rep who's both setting and closing, and they're doing their own prospecting, and they're also taking inbounds, and they're also, they're kind of doing the full life cycle of sales. Yeah. Because the SDR role just doesn't make sense economically when, most of what they're doing doesn't work, right? If most of what you're doing is just sending emails that aren't landing and aren't affecting you, that doesn't make sense from a business perspective. So I really believe that that's the future of this space. And that's kind of a return to how things were. Like when I started my career, that was my role. I had, here's your leads, here's your book or your accounts, like go hit them up. go build your pipeline, go close the deals, and you get paid a commission. Like that was how things worked. And I think we got away from that as an industry to everyone's collective detriment. You now have sales reps who are, they've been in sales, they were SDR, they have no idea how to actually close a deal. They have no idea how to actually solve people's problems. You've got account executives who have no idea how to build their own pipeline. And you've got businesses that have these overbuilt sales teams who have to go lay a bunch of people off. I don't know who won from that. So, yeah.
It's true. It's and I think Apollo's been, in your content, you've been really singing that song around having sort of that unified sales role, which again is probably what it used to be, but now with probably from 2020 and the crazy growth with VC funding and startups, etc., where just go and hire 30 SDRs and then it becomes this farm of SDRs, just basically spamming people, and then the AEs are kind of there closing deals. And I guess in those years, that was kind of working, and I guess they had the funds to just go and hire like crazy. But now everything that I've been reading and hearing and actually experiencing is that really 2024 has been a really tough year for a lot of businesses. So being a lot more brutal, for lack of a better word, in terms of the outbound sales function and looking at, okay, well, how can we reduce headcount? How can we be more efficient in our outreach? And kind of, that kind of going back to that revenue GTM model where it's not about sales and marketing. It's like, well, how are we driving revenue as a unified team? Yeah. Sounds like, you're seeing the same thing in Apollo.
100%. And I think, when you really dig into it, the best run organizations have been doing that the whole time. To your point, about this, let's go hire 20 SDRs. Like if you're willing to burn $5 million a year of VC money, like you can do that. That makes sense. If you're everyone else, the 99% of the economy that's not fueled by venture capital, then you can't do that. So that is, I think, where things are going. I've been wrong before. I'll say this. I'll give a good example. I didn't think Bitcoin was going to go anywhere. So, I've definitely made some wrong calls in my life. I'm open to being wrong about this, but that's kind of what I'm seeing. Now, AI is an interesting question, though, that you asked. So where is that going? I do think, when I got into outbound sales, really, 2012, 2013, I was an early adopter of sequencing and these automation tools that let me outperform my peers. I was just better. I closed more. I was more effective. That same thing is happening now with AI, where if you know how to use it and you're using it well, you're going to be a better salesperson because it just lets you do more work, like meaningful work. So what we're seeing, we've just launched a feature called AI Power-Ups. It's basically a GPT that's built into Apollo. So what you can do, very tactically, I can go build a list in Apollo, and then I can write a prompt and I can say, hey, go read all of their websites, look for this specific phrase, summarize what it is that they talk about, that, the context of how they use that phrase on their page. And then I can build a prompt on a prompt on a prompt. So if I'm saying, hey, go look at all of these websites, see if they offer social media marketing services, see if they then offer TikTok services, see if they then offer video creation services. If I sell to that really specific niche of people, I can have the Power Up go take that big list, narrow it down to only the people who it returns results for, who are like, yep, these people do TikToks, video services for, XYZ industry. Now I've got my 20 people. And that's where what I was talking about earlier comes into play. So you just had AI. You can have AI now go research in a pretty quality way what used to take a human days or weeks to do in a day.
Yeah.
And what that then lets you do isn't have AI go do the outreach for you. I think that's where things fall apart for people right now. You got to go do the outreach. You got to go write the email. You got to go make the call. You got to go have that human to human connection. But what the role that AI is playing is making sure that what you're doing is relevant. And I think that is where that piece comes into play. And I'm seeing a lot of you see this if you are unfortunate enough to have to spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, like I do, because that's part of my job. I see a lot of, agencies, clagencies, and not to throw shade, but I see a lot of people who have they have an interest in making things seem better than they are so they can win more business. One of the things they're going to do is say, like, I can have AI go do this and send all these automated emails. Well, to Google, that's no different than you just blasting a button, like it's the same kind of result. So yeah, that's kind of where I see things going with AI. I think the capabilities will continue to get better and better. And I do think that, people using AI are still on the very cutting edge of the industry. Like 99% of salespeople probably aren't using it effectively. So now is a good moment to get your hands on it and start trying to figure out how it can play into your work stream.
Yeah, and I think it sort of aligns with how I'm viewing it as well, where AI is more of an assistant or an agent to, as you said, like a calculator to help you, not to replace what you're doing, but to be there as especially for that kind of grunt work, the research, all of that sort of stuff. It makes complete sense. But as you say, where it falls down is where people are just using it to write, look, I'm sure email copy will get better, but using it to just pump out templates and sequences and things like that, it's you can smell it a mile away. So I guess from Apollo's perspective, like, so not workflows, power ups. That's yep. So yep. In terms of next year and beyond, like, how do you see? Is that probably the main use case that you guys are sort of forecasting in terms of how AI will be baked into Apollo?
Oh, great question. Trying to get some sneak peeks at the roadmap. I'll see what I can say without getting in trouble. So Power-Ups is going to be a part of it. And I think expanding what Power-Ups can do, can you give you essentially more capabilities to search, scrape, and analyze the web? That's definitely going to happen. There is a feature that's pretty new to Apollo today. It's called Ask Apollo, which is essentially an LLM that's trained on your own data in the product. So right now it works in our conversations product, which is kind of similar to Gong for those of you who are listening, but at a much, much more palatable price point. So if you have a sales call or any number of sales calls, you can go into this feature called Ask Apollo and you can ask it a question in just like natural text. Be like, hey, what did they say about, competitor X, Y, or Z? That feature is going to get probably a lot more investment where you can come in, if you're an organization using Apollo, like you guys, you've been using it for a couple of years, you'll be able to just ask Apollo in natural language. You're like, hey, what were my win rates 2 years ago? Or how much did I close from this industry, in March of 2024 or whatever. And Apollo will be able to give you the answer. I think that's the vision for where we'll go. So Ask Apollo, that's going to get some investment, AI power-ups for sure. And then kind of connecting, just kind of suffusing AI to the rest of the product where it makes sense. I think that's like the big takeaway for us. You're going to see a lot of other stuff coming out. I mean, the pace of innovation right now at Apollo internally is insane. I just got out of a presentation of all the stuff the product's going to do. And, I mentioned I have the knowledge base in the academy team. And I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to keep up with this. This is my honest takeaway. I'm like, there's so much new stuff that I got to go build, hire more people to even keep up. But that's where I think AI is going to come.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I think that's it's the right approach. It's sort of looking at how can it assist, how can it benefit as that kind of assistant or that agent, but you're still going to need someone. Like sales is, it's human to human, isn't it? And probably with AI now, we're probably even more sensitive now to receiving outbound or cold, whatever it is. If you can feel that it's AI generated and it just has that feel straight away, doesn't it? So yeah, that's probably going to separate, like really good outbound to really bad outbound, isn't it? In the next sort of months and years, is sort of looking at, okay, we're all going to have the same AI research tools, etc. But how are we using that, and how are we still making sure that we're coming across in a really human way? And maybe that does go back to sort of less volume and back to that more quality, which is probably counter to how things have been over the last few years. It's been very much, volume. But as you say, with Google and Microsoft and Yahoo, reducing email, like just making life easier for more difficult for SDRs, it's going to be more about that quality over quantity.
I think so. And I think, going back to where we started the conversation with in terms of content marketing, it's going to be the return of like proper marketing, right? That kind of drives the business forward, and that intersection of sales and marketing working together. I think we're seeing that social is more important than ever, like especially as this younger generation grows in their career and starts to get access to budgets and buying decision power. This is a mobile first world that these folks live in, right? And it's also kind of like, I hate to use this term, it's also kind of an influencer driven world, and like not in the, it doesn't have to mean in like the net, like a superficial kind of fake way, but the people who are out sharing what they're doing that's working, or sharing what they're doing in general, those are the people who are garnering eyeballs. And then if you're consuming somebody's content on LinkedIn or Instagram or TikTok or wherever, you feel like you know them, even if you don't. So if that person then messages you or emails you, like your likelihood to respond goes through the roof, because this is somebody who you know or is known to you. So I think that that's going to play a bigger role too. And like the people who are going to win are the people who have some sort of presence. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be an influencer. Like that's not what I'm saying, but it means that you have to be like discoverable or like knowable, right? You've got to be a person. And to your point, you've got to be doing things that AI can't do. AI doesn't, they can probably, I don't know how good it'll get, like faking up, videos and things like that. We'll probably see some really crazy stuff with AI, but having that human to human interaction, I think you can tell ultimately. I also think weirdly, not weirdly in the context of like the long arc of things, but in the context of the last few years, everything went so remote and digital in that post-COVID era. I think it's going to like being in person is going to make a big comeback, going to trade shows or events or happy hours or meeting up in person to talk about things. Like if you can secure that, that's going to be really important. It's obviously not scalable. And like you said, it's not about scale anymore. It's about quality, right? And if you're going to make the investment to go drive out and meet somebody somewhere, you better be damn sure that they can buy what you're selling, right?
Yeah.
So I think
I'm sure that there's maybe SDRs listening going, so does that mean that my quota is less now?
Yeah. Well, no, unfortunately, that's not how that works either.
But it might be the quota is the same, but it might be that, unless this is getting into whole SDR KPIs, but, it might just be that maybe it may be less volume driven KPIs, in terms of calls, emails, LinkedIn outreach. Not that they're all important, but to get that quality aspect of it, less volume, because volume is going to drive bad behavior and really generic outreach, isn't it? So I guess for sales managers, the challenge is meet quota, but try to do things in a much more quality and human way. That's going to be the challenge. Yeah.
100%. And then for marketers, the same way, right? Like you can't, and this is what I've kind of told my team, and we get this a lot, like from, whether it's from the people above me in the organization or investors or people kind of like ancillary advisors, whatever. There's a lot of pressure right now for people to be like, oh, well, just have AI do that. Have AI do that. And like you mentioned, like, I don't think AI could write the book that we wrote. I just don't. It could, maybe you could.
It could. It would be terrible, but yeah.
Yeah. And if you really got hands-on with the prompter and like, went chapter by chapter or page by page, you could probably get to something close to it. But why not just write the book at that point? You're just like, it doesn't make sense. I think that content, we've already seen so many people use AI to pump out a bunch of garbage SEO articles, just a bunch of garbage content. And the way that these large language models work, right, is they are predicting the most likely next letter, the most likely next word, the most likely next frame in the video. By definition, that means that they're not doing something original. They're doing what's most likely, right? They're doing like that like median thing. So what I've kind of told my team is like, we've got to go so hard in the other direction. That's the only way to stand out. And I think that you're going to start to see, this is something I've been talking with my team a lot about, is like, what's the most valuable traffic to your business? It's branded search. It's people searching for the name of your company. Well, how do you earn branded search? You've got to make incredible content that people want to consume, that they then want to know more about your business and go search for it. And then that brand, when you think about Google, who's Google going to give the top ranking on your branded search term. You're going to get that. And then you're going to get that traffic. And then that traffic is going to convert. So that's really the game. Like, so much is changing with SEO right now. I was just reading an article about, Google bringing in these AI snippets into the search engine results. Like, they're not even putting traffic to your site anymore.
Yeah, they've just launched in Australia, by the way, as well. AI overviews. Yeah.
Yeah, there you have it. So you did all this work to create this incredible content, this SEO optimized content, and Google rewards you by not sending you the traffic.
Yeah.
That, the traditional model is just gonna die. It's dying now. So if you're, from what I've been telling my team is like, we have to tack as hard as we can in the other direction on brand content. Now, to the extent that we do SEO, that also has to be really different. That's got to be editorialized. That's got to be a story, right? That's got to be something that is really different and earns and owns, that can't just fit into a snippet, right? That's like deserves your attention. And I know we're coming up on time, but I think like this trend is, I see the parallels between outbound sales and inbound marketing in the way that the market is evolving. And both of them kind of lead back to, no matter what channel you're using, it's about that quality. It's about doing things that only you can do, bringing a unique perspective and driving unique value.
Yeah, I think, and I wanted to just briefly touch on sort of marketing in general. Like, there's a lot of, sort of marketers, CMOs listening, and even small business owners, right? And they're probably wondering, is it worth investing in content marketing? Is it worth investing in social SEO content, etc.? And it's like, well, really, yes, because if you don't, you're not going to be anywhere in the future. And as you said, it's all about building that brand. And then the way you build that brand is having, really good content and being consistent about it, not just on your website, but doing things like podcasting, YouTube, webinar. You guys are doing a lot of webinars, like being consistent. That's what we're telling our clients, is that, you need to be present and you need to be consistent, because with, ChatGPT and AI coming, it's going to reward those brands that it knows, not brands that it doesn't know. So yeah, it's super important.
Nailed it. It's more, for those asking, it's more important now than ever. And if you don't, what you're left with, the only option you're going to be left with is paid ads. And
not getting any cheaper.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to find the most expensive way to grow your business, start there.
Yeah.
Not to say it doesn't have a place. It has a place. It definitely has a place. But that's Google didn't get to be Google for no reason, right? That's what made Google Google.
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think, cost per clicks are not what they used to be. And that's the reality, right? So I think now I'm really seeing a big shift towards, even for us as an agency, is really shifting more towards more of an organic marketing play. A little bit, really doubling down on that a lot more than maybe in the past. It was sort of like paid ads had a massive role, and it still will, but just kind of trying to own that organic sort of conversation. But I know we're coming up on time, as you said, but a couple of rapid fire closing comments, if I may.
Let's do it.
What would be your number one marketing tip for 2025?
Vertical video. That is just what all of the platforms are prioritizing right now. Yep. So TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever people are, that's the present, and that's likely to be the future. So go there.
Love it. Love it. And totally agree. What's a book you can't recommend yourself, unfortunately, Josh, or you can if you like? What's a book or a podcast you'd recommend?
A book or a podcast I'd recommend. I just finished reading the new Malcolm Gladwell book, Revenge of the Tipping Point. It's not about marketing. It is actually. It's a bit about marketing. It was a good read. I'd recommend.
Okay, very cool. And how can listeners find you online?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. I go by Joshua Garrison on LinkedIn. You can find me there. That's the only place you'll find me. I'm not active on any other social channels, so you can find me there.
Unless we get a yacht and we find you on that island, then maybe we can find you that way.
Come to my island and we'll hang out. We'll have a drink.
That's right. Well, thanks so much, Josh. It's been, we could talk for hours. I've so enjoyed the conversation. You really just answered, everything I wanted to discuss today, and excited to hear about what you guys are doing in Apollo. Keep following your journey. Hopefully catch up again in the future. But you guys are doing a phenomenal job Product aside, just from a content marketing perspective, and it's a really great example of how companies can do content marketing really well. So yeah, thanks so much for joining, and
thanks so much for having me.
Catching up in the future.
Me too. It's been a pleasure. Really appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
Cool.
All right. Thanks. Take care.